Welcome to Menopause Reimagined. I'm your host, Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for more than 18 years, and I'm in menopause. I'm a menopause educator, menopause researcher, and I'm the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that empowers you to take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. Today, I'm speaking with Natalie MacLean. She's known as the world's best drinks journalist and has won 4 James Beard Foundation Journalism Awards. She's the author of Red, White, and Drunk All Over and Unquenchable. Her new memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, is a national bestseller. Natalie hosts the New York Times recommended podcast, Unreserved Wine Talk, and offers popular online wine and food pairing classes at nataliemaclean.com. Now, here's Natalie. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Natalie.
It's great to be here with you, Andrea.
I'm happy because when you reached out to me, I thought, what a great topic, because it's something that I know myself as I've gone into menopause now. And when I was in perimenopause, my relationship with alcohol changed significantly. I literally couldn't drink it anymore. And especially now that I'm in menopause, if I even have a sip of wine, I full on like hot flash. Like it's almost instant for me. And I wanted to talk about this because I know that a lot of women, those of you who are listening and you're like, yep, I love my wine and I don't want to give up my alcohol. I thought it would be great to have a conversation with Natalie because Natalie is an expert when it comes to it. And she's obviously written the book that I talked about in the introduction. So let's dive in, Natalie. Like, first of all, what inspired you to write your book?
Well, it's based, I mean, you look at the title Wine Witch on Fire and you think, oh, this must be about an angry woman who drinks a lot of wine and owns a lot of cats, but it's not. It's also not as much of a downer as the subtitle would lead you to believe, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, but it's definitely a coming of age, a coming of middle age story. It has a happy ending and humor. But what inspired me to write it, Andrea, was I call it my no good, terrible, very bad vintage, personally and professionally about a decade ago, just as menopause hit. And all the things went wrong. So it started with, in January, my husband of 20 years asking for a divorce, which kind of blindsided me. And then it ended with an online mobbing on social media. And in response to these two events, the depression from the divorce, the anxiety from the social media, I started drinking too much. I'd been writing about wine for 14 years before that happened and never had a problem with it. But when these things hit, I mean, I had easy access. I had the cloak of professional respectability. If you see a wine glass in my hand at noon, I must be, tasting and evaluating that wine, not, drinking too much. So
Right.
it all was the perfect storm that caused those issues. And now, a decade later, I want to write about them, especially for women who are going through those kinds of issues. Their situation might be different, but the feelings and the themes are often similar.
Talk a little bit about our, I guess, desire to have alcohol. So, like you're saying, you went through all of these life events. How do we use alcohol to help us through them?
Well, there's in my book, it wasn't meant to be a self-help book, but it's kind of turned into that in the way that readers are responding to it. But in my book, one of the tips I mention or share about moderating alcohol is, what was the thought just before the thought that said, I need a drink?
Mm.
And I think often it's about stress, or we're hangry, hungry and tired, or we're frustrated or feeling thankless. As women, we carry so much on our shoulders, whether we work inside or outside the home, there's family. We're often the sandwich generation now, looking after elderly parents and youngsters, or even those,
Yeah.
who are off to university or wherever they're headed. They still need us. And so there's just so much pressure. And I think it can be an easy crutch to say, well, I've worked hard today. No one's thanking me, so I'll thank myself with a drink and then another one. A lot of women find it a way to transition from their whatever they're doing during the day to relaxing during the night.
Mm. And you were saying that you drank too much. You ended up drinking too much.
Yeah.
And what made you want to reverse that?
Well, there's usually a rock bottom kind of situation. And for me, it was the shame that came from that situation. My partner and I met a wonderful man after my divorce. And we used to like to host dinner parties. He cooked, I pulled the corks. It was a good team effort. And but one night, like, he was noticing that I was drinking a little bit more and more. And one night, after, we were hosting a dinner party, and dinner had finished, and everybody was sitting around the table just chatting, and I felt really tired. And so I wandered off into my office. I had a small sofa there, and I fell asleep. So I
Mm.
blacked out. And
Mm.
well, I asked my partner the next day, what did people say? I wasn't there to say goodbye. And it almost would have been better if they had said something judgy, but it was more devastating when they said nothing.
Mm.
And the shame of that, Andrea, was like, I'm a wine professional. People turn to me in a restaurant and give me the wine list. They get their wine recommendations from me. And here I am, a woman in midlife who can't handle her alcohol. I wouldn't want that tolerance, but I was using it too much as a crutch. And so it was just the shame and that sort of rock bottom moment of, I need to change my relationship. This is out of hand.
Mm. No, let's talk about wine culture for a minute because it is such a big thing. I mean, you see memes all over the place. You see, and it's even, when people are speaking, it's like, oh, I gotta have my glass of wine. And it's become this very accepted way of dealing with things, or accepted norm, or it's cool, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
cool thing, right?
It's the only socially approved drug that I know of, right? Cigarettes, taboo. Harder drugs, of course, they're out. But wine is still
Mm.
socially not only accepted, but almost sometimes expected or demanded. Because if I know personally, if I show up and don't have a glass of wine now, I am in a bit of a different category being a wine professional. They think as a woman, you're either pregnant, you have a problem with it,
Mm.
or maybe it's a religious reason. But there's got to be some issue if you're not drinking, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and even me, it's funny, and I was never a huge drinker, but I love prosecco, or I'd like a glass
Mhm.
of wine once in a while. Like it would be more on a rare occasion for me. But even me, I remember I would be like, but wait, I can't drink anymore. And it's like there was like shame attached to it that I couldn't drink anymore. But now I'm just like, I can't drink anymore. I can't, for so many reasons, like even disrupted sleep and etc.
Yes.
But I do believe that it's become, like you said, it's very interesting. It's like this accepted norm, but it's the only, yeah, very, very well put. I like the way you put it.
That's great and I think things are turning around now with dry January, sober curious. It's becoming more and more socially acceptable not to drink. At least you're not made to feel embarrassed. And people are hosts and others are finding, nice non-alcoholic drinks, not like here's a glass of tap water. Have fun with that. And as a wine professional, I have never been more focused than now on recommending non-alcoholic wines, low and no. But I am really building up the wine reviews on my site to get as many non-alcoholic wines on there as possible. And of course, you don't have to be consuming a non-alcoholic wine. You can have whatever you like, a cider spritzer or whatever but I think we need to be aware. We talk about inclusivity and diversity. I think we need to include people who don't drink alcohol and don't make them feel like freaks.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is I hosted a PR event. So I have another company, and I've been in the health and wellness world for a very long time. It's gonna be 24 years,
Wow.
like in March. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I hosted an event, and this was 2 years ago. And then it's a show that we go to every year, and another show this year. And a major trend at both health shows was non-alcoholic
Mm.
beverages,
It's
like
huge.
huge.
Yeah.
And from like, from wine to like the hard liquor and to
Mhm.
the chasers, like it's really interesting to see how things have changed. So I agree with you. Definitely the tides are turning.
Yes.
Natalie, you mentioned earlier how your partner had said something to you that he thought you were drinking a little bit too much. How would somebody know? So, if somebody obviously maybe is with somebody that doesn't really know, or if they do, they have somebody that can tell them. But what if they're not with a partner, or maybe they're not drinking with their friends or family? How would we know when too much is too much?
That is a great question. And the right amount or how much is too much will differ for everyone. So for some, the right amount is none. Alcoholism runs in my family. People can have medical conditions or just make it a choice, even apart from medical issues or whatever, or dependency, and choose none. And that is the right amount. Too much is 1 glass. So, and I fully respect that. Um, then for those of us who want to partake in drinking, it is a personal decision, first of all, but then there are medical guidelines. And so on a personal level, you have to ask yourself, do I feel good? Is this part of my social well-being, the way I connect with my friends and family, say over dinner and a glass of wine? Is it part of my culture? All kinds of questions play into how does wine or alcohol more broadly play a role in your life? And do you feel good about it? Do you feel good about it psychologically? Do you feel good about it, bodily, mentally, all of that? You need to check in with yourself and, real talk, be honest with yourself. As I think we all sense when we've had too much of anything. There's a reason we don't, inhale a full chocolate cake, even though sometimes we'd like to. It doesn't feel good. It's not good for us, and so on.
Mm.
And then beyond that, how much is too much? There are there are a number of guidelines out there from very trusted medical organizations and institutes. So, for instance, in the United States, the CDC and National Institutes of Health recommend no more than 1 drink per day, maximum of 7 per week for women. I think it's 2 for men, 14. In Canada, Health Canada has actually not changed its guidelines since 2011. There's been some announcements about, no more than 2 drinks or anything over 2 drinks or 1 drink or all alcohol is bad. But those have come from groups that are not Health Canada or federally endorsed. So the Canadian Association of Substance Abuse, I think it is, made its recommendations, but it advocates zero tolerance and abstinence. But Health Canada guidelines remain 2 drinks a day per women maximum, 14 per week, no more than 3, or no more than 3 at any one sitting, because then you get into excessive alcohol. So if you're looking for those kind of guidelines, it's somewhere between 1 and 2 maximum per day for women.
And what about in the US? Is it the same guidelines as Canada or the UK? I mean, we have listeners from all over the world who listen to our
Right.
podcast, so I just wanna make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is it
absolutely.
the same in di
Well, in the US, it's one drink per day for women. That's their, it's either it's probably both the CDC and the National Institutes of Health, 1 per day for women. And then some European countries have up to 3 per day for women. So it does vary a little bit by
Okay.
country, but I think, if you
You're
want
looking
to
1 to
adhere
2.
to moderation,
Right.
you're 1 to 2 drinks maximum per day as a woman.
I remember years ago we used to, and this is, I'm guessing it's changed, and because I want to get into the pros and cons of,
Mhm.
because I'm all about healthy living and healthy
Sure.
choices and empowering ourselves to make the choices that we want to make for our own bodies. I
Yes.
remember hearing years ago that the pros for drinking, let's say something like red wine, is that it's, contains resveratrol and that
Mhm.
it's, beneficial for us. Has any like has any of that changed? Like, has the thoughts around the health benefits of alcohol, has that changed in recent years?
I think we're getting to know more and more as more and more studies come out. And so I can share with you what I've learned. Of course, I'm not a health professional, and this isn't medical advice, the usual disclaimers. But yes, indeed, the heart benefits are probably the biggest. And especially as women hit menopause and beyond, the risk of heart disease and stroke increases. So, what I've read from some studies is that the health benefits as they relate to heart um, are increased as you hit menopause and beyond, because your risk of heart disease goes up and alcohol helps decrease that risk. Of course, anything, once you start drinking 3 glasses a day or more, um, your risk of just about everything is going to increase. Binge drinking, of course, you can't just save up all those glasses of wine and have them all on a Friday night. That's not going to work either. So, but the heart benefits are one of them. There are benefits. Wine is a dilator. You know, it's why people get flushed or the red nose. So it's good for circulation, and there have been health benefits related to a decrease in, say, Alzheimer's and dementia and other brain-related diseases. But again, it's I don't know if they call it a J curve. I'm way out of my depth science-wise, but I'll just share with what I've learned as a non-health expert. But it really starts to, like, you get some nice benefits at 1 to 2 glasses, and then it starts going in the other direction, 3 and higher. And of course, these benefits are not a reason to start drinking if you're not drinking now. So that's all caveated there. But
and I think that's an important thing to say. Exactly.
Exactly.
There are a lot of other ways that we can get benefits for our heart health, and, you know, starting to drink alcohol is not one of them. But yes, I hear you.
Exactly. And so there's others that, you know, there's a lower risk in that moderate range of becoming obese. Now, you know, you never know when these are conflated with other lifestyle issues. So someone who's a moderate wine drinker may be exercising, maybe eating right. So it is really hard to tease out, like, is it the wine or is it the lifestyle overall? But also women who drink moderately have stronger bones than non-drinkers. And the risk of type 2 diabetes is lower. But again, they all go up after moderation is left behind. Then we can talk about sleep if you like, Andrea.
Well, I'm huge on sleep. So yes, sleep is very
Yes.
important. And especially over the last several years, a lot of us had, you know, would have a nightcap before we go to bed.
Yes.
And the issue with, and I'm going to let you talk to it, I just want to make a quick note, is that the issue with sleep, first of all, it's for those who've been listening to my podcast for a long time, know that it is like that and digestion, the two top things we need to be taking care of ourselves as we go into this phase of life. But alcohol will actually disrupt our sleep. It'll help us fall asleep faster, but once it metabolizes, it's going to wake us up. So it is really important, ladies, not to drink your alcohol before bed. But go ahead, Natalie.
Yeah, you should be metabolizing it. It should be with dinner or, excuse me, earlier in the night. So again, what I've gleaned from what I've read is that, you know, alcohol, as it metabolizes, converts into congeners and will raise your heart rate, make you sweat, and that's what will bring you up out of sleep in the, you know, they call it the witching hour, 3 a.m. You know, that's when we rise out of sleep. That's what's happening as the body metabolizes the wine or any alcohol. It's also a diuretic. So you will generally excrete twice the volume of fluids that you consumed. So you're going to be up to the bathroom multiple times a night too with too much wine. And finally, it dehydrates, partly because of that diuretic thing. And, you know, just alcohol is osmotic. So you're going to get that headache, that because your brain is dried out. So it's not good for sleep. So again, I always advise enjoy your wine with food. You'll absorb it slower, in moderation, and at least a couple of hours before you go to bed. That nightcap, it is false sleepiness. It will just, you will go into your sleep and come right out of it at just when you don't want to at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Well, actually, what's interesting is we've done a ton of research on women in perimenopause and menopause and sleep. And the results of our survey, we have now over 3,000 people that have filled it out. So for any of you who are listening who have not filled out our surveys at Morphus, I'm going to put a link below. Please fill them out. It literally takes you less than a minute to fill out our surveys, but they're so valuable because then we could quote the statistics in conversations like this, like I'm having with Natalie, because we have a signs and symptoms survey, a sleep survey, we've got a mood and anxiety survey, we have women in the workplace, and phantom smell. So that's what we have up right now, and we're going to be adding more. And we published actually 2 of our surveys. We have white papers on 2 of them. So our research that we are doing here at Morphus is so important, and I would love all of your help. So please, please, please fill out the surveys, and we'll put a link below. But
that's great.
Our sleep survey, Natalie, what it showed is that the 3 main reasons we're waking up in the middle of the night in this phase of life, number 1 is because of stress, waking up between 2 and 4. Number 2 is because we're going to the bathroom. And number 3 is night sweats. So literally, like what you're talking about those are the reasons that we're waking up. So ladies, if you're going to have your drink, please not before bed, because we need to treat our sleep as sacred. And I'm going to do a whole episode around sleep. But this is important. So I'm glad that you brought up the sleep.
I'm tuning into that. And I am binge listening to all your episodes, Andrea. Once I discovered your podcast, it was like, I'm going right back through your back catalog there. Just such a wealth of information. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I'm so grateful because we were named this year, actually last year in 2023. And one in 2023, one in 2024. Our podcast was named in the top 10 most popular podcasts globally for menopause, and
Oh,
number
wow.
4 for perimenopause. So I was so grateful. So
Yay!
thanks to all of
Wow.
you who are listening to our podcast, because
Well deserved.
oh, you're so sweet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so before we end the interview, what I want to talk about is changing habits. So you talked about before how once you came to that realization, you're like, okay, I need to make a change. How did you make those changes?
So lots of therapy. I'm a big proponent of therapy, and I'll always be in therapy. I'm a work in progress. Because I asked my therapist point blank, I said, and this is all in the book, so you can be a fly on the wall as you read the book. I said, should I quit? Should I just go sober? Alcoholism runs in my family. And she said, well, let's just focus first on harm reduction, because the biggest benefits when it comes to excessive drinking happen between going from excess to moderation. And then from moderation to deciding if you want abstinence is a much easier journey. But the real huge health benefits are getting from excess to moderation. So she said, let's do that first. She said in her experience, it often doesn't work to go cold turkey right from excess. That's again not for everyone. But it turned out that it worked for me. So we first had to deal with the underlying issues, the depression from the divorce, the anxiety from the mobbing. And once those were dealt with, that's still work in progress, the axiomatic need or the automatic need to, I need a drink, really subsided.
Hmm.
That wasn't driving those feelings anymore. So that was tip number one, deal with those issues. Two, what was the thought before the thought that said, I need a drink? And can you handle it some other way? For me, a 5-second circuit breaker, just putting my hand on my heart and saying, is this what you need? Maybe get out, have a walk, take a bath, watch a show, anything to change my energy. What worked the best for me was just getting outside, even for 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
especially if you've got any sort of nature around you, we have a small park. I love the Japanese concept of forest bathing. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
really
Shinrin
will,
Roku, amazing. Yes.
oh, you know the Japanese name for it. But it will really change your molecules and your mental mindset. That would
Your
be number three.
parasympathetic. So what it's
Yeah,
doing is it's actually stimulating our parasympathetic part of our
oh,
nervous system, which
nice to
helps us
know.
to relax. Yeah. So that's what
Oh,
walks in nature do. Which is why like is so important that it's one of the tools to have in our toolbox if we're able to. If you have nature near you, even going for a walk around the block, would
yeah,
be
exactly. Anything like that. I started making non-alcoholic and low alcohol wines and water, of course, part of my repertoire, alternating them, because sometimes it's just that
okay.
habit of raising and lowering a glass and just, I haven't smoked, but I'm sure smokers might feel the same. It's just habitual wanting to be puffing on something, wanting to be drinking on something. So it's amazing. Like when I started alternating a non-alcoholic drink for every glass of wine that I consumed, it really slowed me down and made me enjoy the evening, because alcohol takes you out of the moment, too much of it. And
Mhm.
yet, wine is meant to be the drink of conversation when it's consumed slowly. It's meant to help connect you. But, you're just trying to obliviate the situation if you're just downing it. And then like little tactical things. So if I open a full bottle of wine that my partner and I are going to enjoy, I'll immediately pour half of it into a half empty clean bottle. So I'm more mindful of how much I'm drinking.
A great
I
tip.
can, yeah, I can save it for the next day. It's going to be fresh. I don't get that mentality of, oh, it's open. It's, clean all the peas off your plate, drink, you may as well drink the wine. Um, but it just, conscious consumption, mindful drinking, it really instead of those automatic top ups. And you want to watch for that in restaurants. Servers who are, always topping up your glass before you're finished it, and you can lose track easily how much you've consumed. So now in restaurants, I
Right.
ask the server, oh, please wait till I'm finished. And they don't mind. But it just makes me think, okay, I've had 2 glasses, time to move to chamomile tea.
Well, then, because you can measure it, which makes a lot of sense, because then you
Exactly.
don't know exactly, you don't know how much you're consuming, which so that makes a lot of sense. And that's good,
Yes.
by the way, not even for people who, so when you're saying changing your habits for you, tell me a little bit. So are you sober now? Like, do you not drink at all, or do you drink in moderation?
Moderation. So for me, what that looks like is 4 nights a week. I'm not drinking anything. 3 nights I am, and I am not crowding everything. It's a maximum of 1 to 2 glasses on the nights
Okay.
where I am consuming. And that's a year-round thing for me now. I feel better. I sleep better. I still enjoy wine with friends and family, but I've moved from, what drew me to wine, Andrea, in the first place was the sensory delight, the aesthetic of it. What I ended up doing during that very bad year was making it an anesthetic. So I had to get back to the aesthetic pleasure
Okay.
of it and stop treating it like a drug. I mean, it is a drug, but you know, um, enjoy it with. So that's where I netted out. 4 nights off, 3 nights, 1 to 2 glasses max. So that's six glasses of wine maximum per week.
And once you made that decision, you're able to stick to that, because I guess in your
It
mind, it's kind of like putting it in the calendar, right? Like, it's like, okay, here are the nights that I'm going to do
is.
it. This is exactly how much I'm going to allow myself to do. And then you're able to keep that moderation.
Exactly. So you make the decision mentally when you have lots of willpower, which tends to be in the mornings, and you have your pre-game plan. Okay, even when I'm going to a restaurant, 2 glasses, then order the tea. Instead of getting there and deciding, oh, two feels like three feels like four, and just sliding into it. So I feel better. Now, when I first moved to this sort of amount for consuming, the first 3, 4, even 5 weeks were hard psychologically. I mean, I wasn't shaking or anything, but psychologically, I really
Yeah,
wanted that glass of wine every evening.
I understand that.
Yeah, it became my, way to transition.
Yeah.
But after the pull and the power of it became less and less following that time period. And, professionally, I still taste wines, but I'm spitting. As I tell my online wine course students, the difference between tasting and drinking is spitting and thinking. So I'm still tasting wines, but I'm spitting them all out, which doesn't sound appetizing. So I'm just talking about personal consumption. But it really worked for me, and everyone has to find that place for themselves.
As somebody who doesn't drink, would that give you the same satisfaction then? Like, so let's say somebody loves alcohol, wants to drink it and can't. Can you, I mean, again, we don't want to be wasteful, of course, but if somebody wanted to try to get that sensation, can you do that then? Like, can you taste it and then spit it out? Like, or I guess I'm just curious because
Mhm.
it's interesting. I guess I never heard that before. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
find that
Well,
fascinating.
yeah, that's what we do with my course students. Like we may have, a variety, like 4 or 5 Cabernets, because we're going to learn about Cabernet and how does it pair with food and where is it grown and all the rest of it. And I will give them the tools they need. There's spray preserves. There's all kinds of ways you can keep an open bottle fresh, because they go, I'm going to open, 5 bottles of Cabernet. What am I going to do? But I encourage them, take a taste. We have taste buds all in through our soft palate, the upper, roof of your mouth, your cheeks, your gums. There's taste buds everywhere. And so you literally are gargling the wine, you're breathing in and out because we're volatilizing, we're making the molecules move faster by heating up the wine. And then we spit it out. You can get a really strong sense of both the taste and the smell. Most of the beauty of wine is actually in the smell, not the taste. It's very powerful. So yeah, that's kind of how we handle it. And then, they've got their preserve sprays and they can save the rest for another day or whatever they like to do. So yeah, I really advocate spitting when you're learning about wine.
So that's a good tip for those of you who are learning or want to be a sommelier. Is that?
Yes, exactly, exactly. The sommeliers in restaurants, they're tasting all the wines, but they've got to be spitting or they'd be staggering across the store,
Yeah.
the restaurant floor.
Good point. Good point. Natalie, where can people find your book if they wanted to read about it? And who would be the perfect customer to purchase it?
Well, let me answer the first question last. There's a reason I approached you, Andrea, about your podcast, because my core reader, the people who are responding to it and buying the book are women, perimenopausal and menopausal women, right in that sweet spot. there are some men reading it. My mother and I joke when we get a nice comment back from a man, we call him an AGM. There's another good man. Not that men hate the book at all, but it's really a woman's story. And as I said, a coming of middle age story. I don't think we hear those stories enough in the media or in books. I mean, they're out there, but not as much as the ingenue or, the, well, usually older men in their declining years. You get those two stories, the young woman or the older man, but where is the middle-aged woman? And in history she's been portrayed as a witch, and that's why I went with the controversial title Wine Witch on Fire, because I believe that a witch, they were traditionally known as healers, women with special powers in quotes, but they just stayed in touch with nature and often with the body. They knew who they were, their inner powers. So for me, a witch is a wise woman who has walked through the dumpster fires of life and come out on the other side stronger, wiser, fiercer.
Hmm.
And so it's a very much of an empowerment kind of book. What I say is that, a good memoir, I think, is one that can help us articulate feelings we've had, but don't know how to express. So your situation may be different. You may not have gone through a divorce, but you've probably felt loneliness or the longing for love. You may not have been online, mobbed online. Hopefully you haven't, but you've probably felt anxiety, fear of the future, what's happening to my career, my kids. And so the specifics are different, but the feelings and themes are the same. And for me, my biggest inspiration was memoirist Glennon Doyle, who said, "Write from a scar, not an open wound."
Hmm.
And then the next question might be, well, okay, you've done all the healing. Why bother writing about this? At first I thought, I'm just going to be vandalizing my own privacy with this book or this story. But I think poet Sean Doherty had a really beautiful answer. And he said, why bother writing about it? Because somewhere, someone has a wound in the exact shape of your words.
Hmm.
And that,
That.
that, and that is coming true because, it happened for me on a small level at first, when I first told my closest girlfriends what was happening in my life, all no good, terrible, very bad things. And it took our friendship to a deeper level because they started coming back to me with deeper stories and things that were happening in their lives. We weren't just talking about the latest Netflix show or kids' soccer practice.
Yeah.
It just took that to a deeper level, a more level. And now it's happening on a broader level with the book. Every day, without exaggeration, I get at least a couple emails or direct messages of women telling me their stories. And I absolutely love that, because that is what a good memoir should do. It's not about, I mean, some people might be curious what it's like to be, get paid to drink, be a wine writer. But most are looking for themselves in a story. And when you hear that reflected back, women coming back with, their stories of struggle, relationships, whatever it is, that's the most gratifying thing. Because in winemaking, there's a term called dry extract. And it's what's left of wine after you boil out all the moisture. And I think dry extract, Andrea, is in us too as people. It's what's left, our inner reserves, our strength, after life has boiled us down to our essence. And the most powerful thing is realizing just how deep your strength is after you've been tested.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I
You.
was going to say, what a great way to end the interview, but I do have one more question.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned the word mobbing 3 times. What happened? We need to know what happened.
Sure. So back a decade ago, there this was in the heyday of aggregators like Huffington Post that would collect together
Right.
articles, Rotten Tomatoes, which still exists, and collects together reviews of movies. So I got a Google alert in my inbox one day, and it was about a wine review I had written but it was posted on another wine review site. And, that site had reached out to me, and, it was run by men. And they said, why don't you be part of our stable of reviewers, and we'll post all your wine reviews on our site? And I said, well, why would I do that? I have my own wine site. So they couldn't come up with a good answer other than, well, this is happening. You can be part of it or not. Okay. So that got me thinking, okay, so they had posted their reviews, and then they had still posted my reviews under their reviews. And I thought, well, I'm a glass half full kind of gal. I'll start doing that. So to give more context to each wine review. And what they were doing is they were recopying the wine reviews that had been published on the LCBO site, which is the Liquor Control Board or Commission, whatever it is, of Ontario. It's like our SAQ liquor board. I thought, oh, well, these must be in the public domain. It's on a government site. Okay, I'll do that. Help readers find more context. Well, that was wrong. I didn't realize at the time they were violating my copyright, or that I potentially could be violating somebody else's. And so it was probably a couple years after I started doing that, prior to them doing it, or them doing it prior to mine. And a number of elderly wine writing men started calling me out on social media for doing this. And I thought, that's weird. But then I started looking into it. I started, asking for legal advice and so on. And even though I was well within the realm of, we call it fair dealing in Canada, fair use in the United States, copyright, they persisted, and it just, decade ago, it went viral, because at the time, I'd won awards, and it was getting all tangled up in everything. And so it got really bad, though, when they started turning to me as a woman and kind of taking me apart piece by piece, my body. So they started with my hair, and then they worked their way down and got quite explicit with their comments.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this just went everywhere, like from South Africa to New York. And back in the day, this was pre-Harvey Weinstein, pre-Me Too. Today, there hasn't been a peep from any of them since the book came out. But really, the whole thing, the mobbing, was not so much about this original issue. And by the way, I just deleted all the wine reviews. I thought, I don't want this, don't need this. I don't care if I'm within the bounds of copyright. I'm just getting rid of all of these quoted reviews. And my reviews, by the way, to this day remain on some of those other sites. Anyway, but it really became very sexualized. And most, if not all, of the mobbers were men who'd been in wine writers for 20 years or more. So it was really quite awful. I developed a heart murmur, and lost 15 pounds in like less than 2 weeks. It was just ghastly. And I went on Zoloft, an antidepressant. So the effects were quite physical. And that's another thing I think that some people don't understand, is that people say, oh, it's the internet, turn it off. But if you earn your living mostly on the internet, you can no more turn it off than a surgeon can operate outside a hospital. So every day I drank the venom because I did not know what was going to happen. Was I going to get a lawsuit? Was I going to lose my home? Was I going to, I didn't know where this was going. So the anxiety was quite extreme. Now it finally tailored off when they, unfortunately, about 6 weeks later, found another woman to throw under the bus. But the effects remain. Yeah. And, I'll even talk about it. I'll slip into present tense. They've done studies, Andrea, where someone who has been through a traumatic car accident is read the same script, and they'll have an MRI measuring their brain waves, and the same areas of the brain are lighting up. So you're not remembering it, you're reliving it. So, as I say, the therapy continues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's just
Thank you.
Awful. And but I'm happy that it's over now, and
Me
that
too.
you're back on your feet, and you have this incredible book. And I urge, we'll put a link below, so
Great.
those who are listening can go purchase it. And we'll put a link for both Canada and the US. And if you're on
Awesome.
Amazon, you're in Amazon on Canada. Are you on Amazon in the US as well?
Yeah, I'm on Amazon around the world. So anybody,
Perfect. Excellent.
whoever,
Okay.
wherever you're listening, it's everywhere. And also all the major bookstores, Barnes and Noble,
Amazing.
Indigo Chapters, etc. And
Amazing.
Andrea, just want to mention, if anyone's interested, I do have a free book club guide. You don't have to have a book club, but it has questions in this guide about how do you feel about your own relationship with alcohol. Like it sparks a lot of discussion, even among between two friends or spouses or whatever. Um,
Is
and
that in the
that's
book that they can access
this
that?
is a free guide at
Free guide.
winewitchonfire.com.
Okay,
So
perfect. So
if you
go to your
go
website.
there, yeah,
Perfect.
you'll find
Okay.
that.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea for anybody who has a book club or not, or just wanted to have a discussion. I think that's great to give a guide. I love that.
Yeah, and there's wine recommendations, both no non-alcoholic and alcoholic, to pair if you're reading it with a group of friends. Again, you don't have to have a book club to do this, but a lot of husband wives and wives and husbands have read it together, especially husband wives, and have felt that it really was a good discussion starter because there's questions about the book itself, but there's again, I'm trying to get back to the reader and what's in it for them and how can they relate this to their lives.
I love that. Thank you so
Thank
much, Natalie, for coming
Oh,
on
thank
today.
you. Thank you, Andrea. This was a delight. I'm so glad we connected. You're outside my realm too, because I'm usually talking to food and wine people all the time, but this is just a lovely, refreshing break for that. And really interesting because you made me think about a lot of these issues as well, which I always enjoy. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Natalie. I wanted to have this conversation because wine plays a huge role in so many of our lives. And if you wanted to decrease the amount you're drinking or perhaps stop drinking altogether, Natalie provided some amazing tips. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please leave a review. I read all of the reviews. I'm so grateful. If you can leave us a 5-star review, I would be very happy to see that on our Menopause Reimagined podcast. Thank you for listening. As always, I appreciate you, and I'll see you at the next interview.